The air cracked with a deafening bzzzt. Pop! And smoke erupted from Karen's prized ATV like a miniature volcano. Her teenage son scrambled backward, coughing and panicking, while Karen herself came tearing out of her front door, screaming like the sky was falling. Neighbors leaned out of windows, phones in hand, capturing the chaos as the ATV's charger melted into a black, smoldering mess right there in the middle of my yard. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. It was a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where the air feels still and undisturbed, promising a peaceful day. I had just stepped outside, coffee in hand, when something bright and wrong caught my eye. Snaking arrogantly across my neatly mowed lawn was that familiar orange extension cord, thicker than a garden hose and twice as obnoxious. My stomach twisted. I already knew where it led before I even followed its trail. Sure enough, there it was. Karen's battered, mud-caked ATV, humming softly as it greedily sucked power straight from the outlet on the side of my garage. She hadn't even bothered to be subtle about it this time. No attempt to hide the cord under leaves or run it along the fence line. No quick text asking permission. She just helped herself, like she had a standing invitation to treat my property like her personal charging station. I stood there, stunned for a second, the absurdity of it hitting me harder than I expected, because this wasn't the first time. Not even close. It started small, months ago during that freak storm that knocked out half the town's power. Karen had shown up on my doorstep, soaked to the bone, begging to borrow an outlet to charge her ATV, which she claimed was essential for helping neighbors with errands. I said yes, thinking, hey, we're a community, help your neighbors out. But it didn't end with the storm. It became a pattern. Every couple of weeks, without a word, I'd find her cord sprawled across my yard like some kind of bright orange middle finger. I tried to be the bigger person. First, I simply unplugged it and left the cord neatly coiled by her gate. Message received? Nope. Next, I installed a lockbox over my outlet. Cost me a couple $100, but I figured the principle was worth it. She responded by cutting the lock clean off with bolt cutters. Bolt cutters, and plugging right back in, smiling and waving like she was borrowing a cup of sugar. That morning, staring at her audacity burning a line across my property, I felt something shift deep inside me. Shock at her nerve gave way to a cold, seething hatred. Not just at Karen, but at the way she forced me into this absurd battle for basic respect. At the way she assumed my kindness was a weakness to exploit. At the way she had chipped away at every reasonable boundary I tried to set until now, finally, it snapped. And once a boundary snaps, there's no going back. There's only one direction left. Forward and hard. Who even does that? I stood there on my porch that night, arms folded, watching the sunset bleed into a darkening sky, and the question kept grinding in my head like a broken gear. Karen wasn't some down-on-her-luck neighbor scraping by. She wasn't working 2 jobs to feed a family or cutting corners just to survive. No, this woman flaunted her money like a parade. 3 ATVs lined up in her driveway like trophies. 2 glistening boats crammed against the side fence. A shiny white camper big enough to house a small army, parked so arrogantly it blocked half the sidewalk. This wasn't about need. It was about entitlement. The kind of entitlement that digs under your skin because it doesn't apologize, doesn't explain, it just assumes. Every time I had tried to be civil, to handle it like reasonable adults, Karen would flash that same clueless smile. Oh, it must have been my cousin. She sometimes uses my stuff. I'll talk to him. A lie so paper-thin it shredded itself the second it hit the air. Her cousin was a kid barely old enough to drive, and somehow he was independently sneaking extension cords across yards to charge $1,000 machines without her noticing? Please. Standing there, I realized something cold and clear. There was no reasoning with people like Karen. You couldn't teach respect to someone who saw decency as a weakness. I grabbed my phone and called Alex. Alex wasn't just a buddy. He was a retired electrician with a mean streak when it came to dealing with idiots, the kind of guy who once rewired a prankster neighbor's illegally installed speakers to blast polka music at full volume every time they tried to play bass at 2 a.m. When I told him what Karen had been pulling, he didn't hesitate. "Meet me at my place," he said. Pizza and beer were waiting when I got there, but so was a glint in his eye I hadn't seen since college. The plan was simple, brutal, and beautiful. A custom-built, hidden load circuit, wired to trip instantly if anyone tapped into my exterior outlet without permission. Safe for my house, safe for anything I plugged in myself. But for an unauthorized leech? Instant catastrophic failure. We sat there sketching out the wiring diagrams, laughing harder with every tweak we made. The more we built it out, the more my anger sharpened into something hotter and heavier. Righteous focus. Every twist of wire, every tightened screw, felt like justice building itself by my own hands. I wasn't going to stand there and be a doormat anymore. It was time to stop playing defense. It was time to hit back, with precision. It didn't take long. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor and impeccable timing. The very next evening, while the sky still smoldered orange with the last blush of daylight, I was standing on my deck, a cold beer sweating in my hand, flipping burgers over the grill. Movement caught my eye. There, moving with the casual arrogance only the truly clueless can muster, was Karen's teenage son. Parading, that same damn orange extension cord across my lawn like he was on some victory march. The audacity of it was almost breathtaking. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I didn't even raise an eyebrow. Instead, I leaned back against the deck railing, the bottle resting cool against my palm, and watched. No confrontation, no shouting, no empty threats. Let the trap spring itself. Let gravity do its job. He plugged in, tugged the cord taut, and ambled back toward Karen's house without a second glance. The clock in my head started ticking. 15 minutes later, almost to the second, the world delivered exactly what it owed. First came the sound, bzzz, pop, a vicious, crackling noise that tore through the evening air like a whip crack. Then, a half-second later, the high-pitched, hysterical wail of an ATV alarm system frying itself into oblivion. Smoke puffed up from the yard like a cartoon explosion. I saw the teenager sprint back outside, eyes wide, hands flailing. He grabbed the extension cord and tried to yank it free, but the plug end was already blackened, the plastic warped and drooping like melted wax. The ATV itself, Karen's precious gleaming toy, sat there, hissing and smoking, its charger reduced to a puddle of ruined circuitry. I could almost hear the battery cells inside popping like firecrackers. And then came Karen, barreling out her front door, barefoot, hair wild, shrieking so loudly I was amazed the windows didn't rattle. She tore across her lawn like a woman possessed, howling accusations at the wind, at the sky, at anyone and everyone, except herself. It was glorious. It was biblical. I stayed where I was, taking a long, slow sip of my beer, letting the chaos unfold without lifting a finger. Because here's the beauty of it. She couldn't blame me. Not legally. Not morally. Not even in the fantasy world she lived in. She had been stealing power. On my private property. She had trespassed. She had violated every basic boundary of respect. And now? Now, she was paying for it. Neighbors started peeking out from their windows, drawn by the noise. Some even stepped onto their porches, phones raised, recording the spectacle unfolding before them. Faces pressed to glass, mouths open in fascinated horror. It wasn't just retribution, it was public reckoning, and every second of it tasted sweeter than anything I had ever grilled on that deck. Karen stormed across the street like a human hurricane, barefoot, still in her grubby house slippers, hair sticking up like she'd stuck her finger in a light socket. Her face was a shade of red I didn't think was physically possible, somewhere between tomato and pure rage. And she was shrieking, words tumbling out in high-pitched, frothing bursts. Sabotage, vandalism, lawsuit. None of it coherent, none of it stopping to catch up with basic logic. I didn't flinch, didn't even raise my voice. Instead, I casually stepped down from the deck onto my porch, beer still in hand, and pointed, slow, deliberate, to the 2 signs bolted to my fence, right by the outlet she had been stealing from. No trespassing. Private property. 2 signs she had to walk past, twice, to plug in her theft. 2 signs she had chosen to ignore, just like every other boundary I had set before. Karen's rant sputtered. You could almost hear the gears grinding in her head, trying to find some angle, some way to spin the story so she didn't look like exactly what she was: a trespasser, a thief, and a fool. I smiled. Polite, controlled, deadly. And then, in the calmest voice I could muster, I explained. I had documented everything. Every incident, every extension cord, every unauthorized plug-in, filed neatly in police reports, time-stamped, and logged. Oh, and those new security cameras mounted discreetly under my gutters? Yeah. They caught everything too. High definition, full color, audio included. If you want to press charges, I said, keeping my tone light, almost helpful, I'll be more than happy to hand everything over to the sheriff's department, including proof of felony theft. Should be an interesting case. I watched it happen in real time, the blood draining from her face, the realization crashing down like a tidal wave. She stumbled back a step, mouth opening and closing uselessly, as if she could somehow rewind time and undo the stupidity that had gotten her here. But there are no rewinds for people like Karen, only consequences. Since that day, not a single orange cord has touched my lawn, not one ATV charger in sight. Karen barely even makes eye contact when we cross paths now, her footsteps quickening, her head ducked low. The neighbor who once treated my yard like her personal gas station now pretends it doesn't even exist. For the first time in months, I could sip my coffee on the porch without scanning for invasion. Grill a steak without worrying about stolen power. Mow my lawn without tripping over a thief's extension cord. Justice wasn't just served, it was deep-fried, crispy, golden, and delicious. Just like her precious ATV.